question. Do you usually, like, only one instructor is working with one student? Is that what happens?
It depends on the task. So it could be either, so if you use the electronic tool, WIMBA, it could be you listening to the students or the students, if they're in pairs, and then grading them. Or it could be, or you could use the rubric for a face-to-face interview, for a presentation. It's really creative.
I wonder, my question is, have we ever had like two instructors, evaluating one particular performance together? Because it never actually happened here because there are only two instructors. But over summer, I have more instructors with TAs. We usually have a pair.
It's very interesting that you bring up the question, because currently I am co-teaching with Ines Nam, who is a graduate student, a master in French, who's here. And last semester, I co-taught 115 with Father Haig, who is right here. So we've had the experience of sharing the same rubric, and that I found personally very, very enlightening.
Yes.
We haven't, and it's not saying one is grading better than the other one. I'm just saying that we all have a different view, and it's been very, very useful to do this together, I believe. I don't know if you have anything to say about this.
Can you also, coming from ESL, can you also use this as a placement?
Oh, that's a good question. What do you think?
Thank you. I have a question related to this one, because I'm kind of wondering what's the nature of this test. In Chinese, I have 5-hour test the whole semester for first year and 4 in the second year, and because mine is kind of basically is an achievement test in nature and a proficiency in format. So in the criteria part of the what we call I have a kind of a dimension of a content and the structures that to which degree they use structures and vocabulary learned from the content. So I use that criteria instead of the kind of the proficiency nature, the criteria to measure.
I think you're right. It's important to make the difference when you assess your students, whether it's proficiency or achievement testing, to know what is it that you're doing and what is it you want to achieve with their sample, oral sample. So it's good to be aware of it. What do you think of the question for ESL? If I give you the question, send you back the question. What would be your own?
We devised something similar to this, but with 3 teachers. What I thought was a 5, the other person thought was a 1, and people were coming in and so quickly that we just finally went with that level, basically.
It's interesting because one of the main ideas also behind the rubric, the research also that's behind the rubric, is to reduce the subjectivity. Because when you do have categories, you have to grade according to each category. And I have many colleagues who told me, I don't know if I want to use the rubric because my grades are so low. So when I'm looking at all of this, if I be just grading, I'll give them a better grade. I said, well, no, you have to really see what it does for you. So it's not about advocating this is the one tool, but it's about really being aware of what it does for you, whether you want to use it and how you want to use it. And maybe if it really brings it down, maybe you need to rework the rubric or change it or adapt it better to the level. But it should not be used as a single tool for placement, I believe. Of course, opinions are varied, but this would be my own opinion.
I'm very much a fan of rubrics and reducing subjectivity where need be. And I think I like the way that you can easily and quickly make notes and assign grades. My question is about how the students then can use this feedback to then improve. I find myself going the other route where I leave open and write in explicitly which grammar structures they need to work on or which pronunciation aspects they have messed up on. And I mean, it's based just on what I remember right after they leave the interview. So in that sense, it's maybe not quite as accurate as it could be. But yeah, how can the students then specifically see what they need to work on?
What I do with that, I use both. This is posted online, so when they get their grades, and I'll show you how I do this, but they get a number and they know what it corresponds to. It corresponds to those rubrics, but I also give them personal comments for each category too.
we had surveyed the faculty, yet it is important to survey the students and find out, are the students actually liking the tool? Are they finding it useful? Basically, especially in regard, not so much in regard to face-to-face, students are used to face-to-face interviews, to presentation, to skits, via high school or other experiences at the post-secondary level. So we're mostly interested in that tool, which is a little more unique for oral assessment. Students said that it was good to reflect on speaking. They liked the re-record option, yet there were technical problems, as you can imagine, it happens. They liked working in pairs. However, partner was unable to hold conversation, some of this, more comfortable than in front of class, and hard to schedule meeting time. And the final, one of the recommendations that we also made was the importance of establishing at the end of the level, I'll show this to you very quickly. Every other year beginning 2009-2010, the oral proficiency of grading majors, supplementary majors, and minors should be assessed in each program through the use of online tools that allow for actual sponsored certification of levels. Such tests can also allow for certification of students and can be funded by combination of student payment and college or department support. So what we've done in Romance this year is that we had each senior major, supplementary major, or minor in Romance languages, we invited each of them to take the oral proficiency interview, which is an ACFL certified interview. This was done via a mass email sent from the assistant chair, Professor Shauna Williams, and a flyer that was distributed to the instructor. And they were also asked to complete a survey before testing. It's still ongoing, but this is something that we have started working on last year and we continue throughout this year. And I will stop right here because I want to make sure that the other panelists have enough time.
So I have a question. So from what I understand, the final assessment is so different from the two other assessments because for the first two we have like the recording window, which is very relaxing for the students, I assume. But for the final one, it's a face-to-face interview. So how do you prepare them for the final one?
The final one is a formal final, which doesn't mean that there's no opportunities throughout the semester for skits, for oral sit. They do have many opportunities throughout the semester in very creative ways to do their oral. Yet they may count as part of the homework or part of whichever part you want to have it. But then the formal one, which is the summative one, is the final oral. But then they have many opportunities. And it's a good point that you bring up because one way or the other, you can't just test them once using a tool they're not familiar with, but same thing with a face-to-face. They have to be familiar. So one way or the other, they have to be prepared. So that's a good point.
You mentioned the funding for the OPIs, that it's a combination of the students paying a certain portion and funds from the department or the college, or I mean, do you see this as will there be an ongoing source of money for doing that?
Well, the hope is that it would be ongoing. The answer is not as clear as the hope. Please.
You may respond to some of that since the center is involved in some of that assessment. Right now, it's primarily intended to benchmark, as the slide indicated. It's done on sort of a periodic basis. Right now we're gathering data, and we're not testing everyone. We're testing a small subgroup, in fact 12 students in each of the language programs. So the idea is to sort of randomly select, so that we can have some statistically significant information, randomly select graduating seniors, see where they fall on some external, outside, relatively objective measure, and then see if that is increasing or maintaining over the course of time. And in that sense, I think, given the fact that the online ACFL OPIs or OPICs, OPI computerized, are relatively inexpensive, I think that's probably sustainable if departments are willing to continue to provide funds for it.
If you have any further questions, please feel free to email Professor Shauna Williams, to email